we can go ahead and get started. My name is Terrence Jackson. I'm a 5th generation farmer from Tuskegee, Alabama, and the Urban Farmer Program Manager here at Sprout NOLA. Today we're going to talk about vermicomposting, one of my favorite topics. I've been working with worms all my life in the backwoods of Alabama under oak trees and pine trees, digging up worms, going fishing, selling them to other fishermen. When I got to college, I started a worm farm at Tuskegee University. We had a pretty large worm farm for a while. Yeah, I just kept going, and I have a small farm at home also. So we'll jump right in. And what is vermicomposting? Do you have any idea? What do you think it is? Yeah. Yep. It's the method of composting used by earthworms. We use red wiggler worms to break down organic rich, nutritious waste into compost. A lot of people call it black gold, which you see on a lot of bags. These fertilizers known as worm castings. They'll be looking like really dark balls in your compost. Once you start to break down, you'll definitely see them. What they do is basically they digest all of that food scraps and then they poop it out, and you got some good compost. So that's basically vermicomposting. It's beneficial because those worms help fertilize the area. It also helps aerate the area. You'll start to see a lot more earthworms in your compost bins once you start to get a lot of that nutrition and everything start to break down. Those worms have a good supply of food to eat, so you'll start to see it more and more. The benefits of vermicomposting: environmental benefits, reduce waste, reduce landfills. You have a more closed food system, especially with composting. Just another method of composting. Nutrient-rich compost, which we all love, especially down here in Louisiana, where we have a hard time getting our hands on organic inputs, things that don't have a lot of chemicals in them and that are readily available to us. We don't really have that here. Cost effective. You can go, like I said, you can either go buy some online, or you can go to Walmart like I did, or you can just go and forage for some. There's a lot of trees and stuff. You can just go look under trees and under a lot of piles of leaves, probably like under there. Probably some worms under there.
They have worms at Walmart?
Yes.
What section did you find them?
In the fishing section.
I'm looking in the wrong section.
Yep. These are the castings, what they talk about. This ball, they're kind of like $4. Yeah. It's a big ball. You can get them offline also. It's called, one I always buy from is Uncle Jim's, and that's on Amazon. And probably about 1,000 worms for about $50. But when you get those worms, make sure you have everything set up for them, because they've been in transport. They're tired, you're tired, and the last thing you want to do is sit them down on a counter and walk away. I had some one time, bought them, brought them home. My wife was like, "Oh, let's go to dinner." Went out on a date, came back, catastrophe. There was worm on the counter, in the sink, on the stove, on the floor. I didn't get put out, but I had to clean it up. So you definitely don't want to do that. But yeah, they are in many different places. Improve plant health. That's one of the main reasons we do it. Also, this compost, vermicompost can put directly onto plants. You don't have to wait or anything. To reduce chemical fertilizer and moisture retention, which we really love, because as you know, it's a little bit on the simmer side right now, but we only got about a month till we all season. Worm castings are highly effective. and they eat pretty fast. Worms eat, and they also use their gizzards, just like a chicken. They have a gizzard. It's full of grit, and it just helps them break down that food that they're eating. They produce a high quality and nutrient-rich compost that you almost put on anything. This is tomato love, though. Tomato really love. You can use many different other worms. The nightcrawler is a bigger, longer worm. It doesn't eat as fast, doesn't produce as fast, but it is great for aeration because they're so big and they move through the soil. They'll create bigger pockets than the red wrigglers were. But the more activity they have is the red wrigglers. They really have a lot of activity. And you really want that because the key features of vermicomposting is ventilation, drainage, and size. Because it can range from different sizes to tell you what your ventilation need to be and what your drainage need to be. No matter what kind of pile or tub or whatever you need, you always need ventilation and you always need drainage. Why? Number one, you don't want anything to go to anaerobic. Anaerobic, when it starts to smell and start to go bad, there is no air circulating through. So you want to make sure that you have air. You don't want it to be wet, soggy. You want it to be moist, but not wet. Once it's starting to get wet and soggy, the temperature go down, everything just start to get horrible. You won't be able to break down. The worms will be miserable, and they'll start to try to come out also. Let me show you what I mean. This right here is orchid bark. You can use this. You can use coconut core. You could use shredded newspaper. You can use leaves. Brown paper bags, any of that. Right now I'm just using this because it's a little bit more finer than what I usually use. I usually use the heavier stuff, bark.
This is for the bedding?
Yeah, this is for the bedding. So any bedding of your choice. But it needs to be a brown bedding, and it doesn't need to be soaked and wet. It does need to be evenly moist though, because these worms, they'll crawl through, and then if they hit a really dry spot, it'll really mess with them. So you want to make sure that whatever bedding you have, when you squeeze it, it doesn't really, nothing really come out. A couple of drops is cool, but if it's too much, then it's gonna be a problem. Also, we put drain holes on the bottom of this. Holes on the top. This is what I mean for ventilation. Always make sure you put holes at the top. And this right here was done with solder-like pen from Family Dollar. It was like 10 bucks. I'm already had this container for something else, and I just used that to put these holes in the top. I got this one also because it had like this foam sealant around it. So when I put the worms in here and clamp this down, no matter what, they're not coming out. They're really not coming out. At the bottom, I put holes on each corner. Want to put them in the lowest part of the container so it can always drain. Even if you have it in here, wherever you sit it, if you sit it outside, put like a little block under it so it can be leaning towards one way so drainage can always be going through. And also, just a little tip, you can get a stick, a toothpick, a piece of wood, anything. I recommend getting a corner, and in the corner you want to put a stick or a hole or something. In that hole you want to put a stick, a piece of rubber, anything. This is just going to help the water have somewhere to guide out, because with all of this stuff in there, these holes sometimes get clogged. But if we put this in here, it's just going to leak down this little piece of twine right here. So have something that you can just put a small stick in there. It's just gonna have something that the water can trickle down out of there. So we already have our container with our top. Our top has ventilation on it. It has holes in it. We already have our bedding. This bedding right here was $7 at Harrell's. $7 at Harrell's. You can get the coconut core online or at Walmart for between 11 and 15 bucks. Just put that in a 5-gallon bucket with water. I would say overnight to kind of let some of that chlorine evaporate out. And then let it drain, let it get dry a little bit, and then put it in here.
Do I circle back around to the chlorine evaporating out?
Uh-huh.
That you can evaporate out of the water?
Oh, yes. So that's a rule of thumb I always use. When I'm making a new bed, I put a 5-gallon bucket and I let it just sit out overnight and let most of that chlorine and stuff evaporate out. And then that way I can just use it in here and it won't cause so many issues. Sometimes it'll cause issues with the worms because the chlorine and all of that is kind of like sterilizing everything. Yeah. And you want all that bacteria, you want all that fungi, you want all of that stuff. They're trying to jump out. You want all of that stuff. So that chlorine will help it. Or if you have a rain barrel, you can just take some of that water out of your rain barrel into a bucket, put your coconut core or whatever you're bedding in, and just let it hydrate like that. That's the best. That's the best you can do right there with that rainwater.
Once it gets better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Do you use just one type of bedding, or if you have like some of this and some of that?
You can mix it all together. Honestly, I like the finer stuff because it helps break down a lot quicker than big wood chips. The leaves are really good. The leaves are good. They break down really quick. They process them really well. And if you have a nice amount of worms in there, they'll break down this whole bed super duper quick. After you wet everything, you want to go in, you can put your worms in. Depending on what you have your worms in, it does just tell you what the method that you'll need to transport them out. If I had this in another bin and I'm just completing a new one to put them in, I'll put a cantaloupe or a rotten sweet potato or something like that. I'll come in and I'll put that fruit in the center, dig a hole, put that fruit in the center of that bed and leave it for like 45 minutes to an hour. And then when I come back, I'll come in and I'll scoop up around that fruit and I'll pick up all the worms and put them in the new bed. But since we have ours here from good old Wally World, we don't have to do that. We're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna sprinkle the worms on in. Gonna sprinkle them on in. We have 2 containers here. Then you can just let them, most of the time, they'll just go on down in the soil because they're running from the light. But in other times, you can put a cap on it. I usually use burlap bags for a cap. So a cap is just something, the keep is like the top of the ground, like grass or just a barrier from them coming up and staying on top of the bedding. I use burlap bags. You can get them from you got like a bundle from Family Dollar. They sometimes give them away for free at Folgers around the city. But you get those burlap bags and you cut them to the size of your container. So I just use this bag right here. We're going to use this as a cap. So what you'll do is you're going to wet this right here. You're going to get it super wet. And then you're going to lay it on top just like this. Just like this once it's wet. That way, the food source is inside. This is wet, it's cool. It gives them direction. They try to come back up, they'll go back down. But it's also a food source for them. Once things are starting to break down on the inside, they can still use this paper bag to eat. Just like the burlap sacks, they'll use those also to eat. This right here will break down a little bit quicker than the burlap. They'll start to eat holes and stuff through it. You'll start to really see it. You don't want to saturate this also. You want to keep it wet, but you don't want to be, you want to be moist, but you don't want it soaking wet. Because this coming here soaking wet, you just watered or sprayed your bed to help it keep moist, things might get over watered. But if you have drain holes and you have it elevated, then that'll help with that. It's gonna take some time for you to get used to what is too wet, what is too dry, how to spray, how things to do. All of that is gonna come with time. I'm sorry, my paper hammer. So after you made your bed, you put your worms in. The best question is, what can you feed them? You can feed them pretty much anything, but it's certain stuff that you just cannot feed them. But what you can feed them is apple core, banana peels, melon rinds, carrot top, lettuce leaves, cucumbers, oatmeal, cooked rice, bread. They love bread, old stale bread. Randomly, just throw it one in there. You can wet it a little bit also. Just spray it, throw it in there. Coffee grinds, eggshells. They love that also. Like I said, the burlap bag as your cap, they'll use that as a source of food also. The things that you do not want to put in processed food. Nope, nothing processed. Oily and greasy food. You don't want to put oil and grease in there. You don't want to put oil and grease in any compost bins. Animal products, meats, bones, dairy, they won't eat it. You just making the bin anaerobic. Disease plants, nope, and excess citrus. Citrus can be put in there in small increments, but too much will definitely harm your worms. The lemons and limes and oranges can be acidic to the worms, so you don't want too much in there. Some is okay, but too much can cause a really big issue. Monitoring your worms is the biggest thing. It's not a lot to keep them alive, but it's some things you should do. Checking the moisture levels. Like I said, if you go in, you squeeze it, 1 or 2 drops come out, that is perfect. But once you squeeze it and it run down your leg, your arm, you feel it on your elbow, tilt it so some more of that water can come out. You don't want that's too wet. The temperature conditions, I never really check the temperature. But when you put your hand in it, if it's warm and you got food waste in there, that means that everything is starting to compost inside of there, and they're not eating it as fast. So if it's starting to compost in the bed, you need to cut back on the amount that you put in for the worms. You don't want it to start to break down in the bed, because the bed will start to warm up, and that's something that we don't want to cook the compost and the worms in the bed. We just want this to be a food source for the worms. But you can check the temperature, and it needs to be between 55 and 77 degrees. Keep in a cool, dark place. It don't have to be dark, honestly, but it needs to be a dim area. I wouldn't say like in your living room or anything like that. Right now I have it in the office underneath my 3D printer. I don't think that's the idea to put it because it's pretty noisy on the 3D printer, but it's like a little open space where I can put it. I have 2 bins stacked on top of each other. So I think that's a lot of space for them. But like I said, there's a table, it's a bit shaky over there, so it might be a little bit disturbing to them. But keeping it dark is super duper important, because like I said, once they start to see the light, they'll start to retreat down back in there. If you're starting to feed them and you have nothing but light, they'll start to retreat down into the soil and not really eat. And troubleshooting common issues like odor and pests. Odor comes, like I said, when things turn anaerobic, when things are not breaking down fast enough. When you add too much, when things don't get ate as quick as it need to be, start to stink. You don't really want that in there. The biggest issues I've seen a lot of growers do is add too much compost or add too much food scrap to their bins, which a lot of the worms is not going to eat all that stuff. So you end up taking some of it out and then put it back in. Another way that you can feed your worms, like you said, you put your food scraps in the freezer. You can divide them up in Ziploc bags, and then you come in and then you take it directly out of the freezer, or you can let it sit out a little while and then put it in here. That way you won't have so much odor. That way you know how much you're giving to them, and you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of excesses like causing an issue. You really, really, really don't want that.
If we're talking like Ziploc size bags, like how big of a Ziploc bag would you throw into?
So it depends on like what it is. Like if it's melon, I'll just cut in this one about the size of my hand. Like everything about the size of my hand for this bin right here. So that's watermelon, that's sweet potatoes, that's everything that I'm gonna put in there. And that should break down in about a week. You know, it depends with everything in the right conditions. That should break down in a week. But you want to keep an eye on it because things can be a little hectic in there, and you just don't want to. You don't want to not pay attention to it, and it's something that you could have caught and caused a whole bunch of issues. Sometimes, when you don't spray like in these corners and stuff, or if you don't be super duper wet, some of the corners get dry, and worms get trapped in those corners because they're so dry. So that's something that you want to, especially the elevated corners at the top, those tend to be dried at the bottom than the bottom because that's where it's coming out at. So stuff like that you want to pay attention to.
Are you spraying it every day? Or every
Like once a week. I just got a spray bottle that I come in and just spray. Like I go down and come back up. So that's probably about 6 to 8 times that I spray just to keep it moist. Just to keep it, and pests. I don't keep these outside. The last one when I was at Tuskegee was at a greenhouse that we had. We had a really bad problem with ants. And the ninth one we have a problem with raccoons and possums. They would love something like this just to pick through and eat. So I keep this in a house in a nice, cool place in the office, so I don't have to worry about too many pests. But if you have rats and stuff like that, they will definitely go through your worm. It's set up for pests to go through them. You got rot food in there with the worms. It's like that's a buffet for them. So you want to make sure you stay on top of that. When you harvesting your compost, like I said, same way I said when you're adding a new bed, you'll come in, you'll put your food right in the middle, dig a hole, put it in the middle, step away for 45 minutes to an hour, and then come back and scoop up all of those worms. That's the way I do it. You could also come in, take this whole bucket and dump it out over a sifter, and then you sift all the compost out and leave the worms, and you put those in the bin. However, it's so many different ways that you can transport them. You can go in and pick them out one by one. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can do that also. And when you separate your worms also, you'll have some that's smaller, you have some that's bigger. Sifting will help that a lot. Sifting will help those smaller worms go through, and you save some of those bigger worms and put them in another bin. And then you can put those smaller worms, you can start a whole new bin with those. Because all of the beds will have castings in them, and a lot of those castings have eggs in them. So once they go through, you sift them, you put all the sifted stuff in here. If you want to take some out for compost, you can. You see the eggs, you take those out and put them into the new one, and then you're good to go. Also, depending on like what kind of worms you got, also that'll make a difference too. Especially with the night crawlers and stuff. to me, it takes them a little bit longer to eat and break down the food, even though they're bigger worms. They're not as vigorous as the red wiggle. The benefit from it is I tend to use vermicompost in my seed starting. That way it just gives them that instant boost that they need in the beginning to help complete the longevity of life. So you can either put it in your potting mix when you make your transplants, or you can use it to top off your trays. I've done it both ways. I think both ways are good. You can make compost tea out of them. So after you've done all of this, everything's broken down, you can take some of the compost and put it in a 5-gallon bucket, and then you just take one of those stones that they use to aerate fish tanks, and you just put that stone inside that 5-gallon bucket with your compost, and just let it go. Just let it go. Those bubbles is just keeping that microbiology alive in that water, and after a while, you can go ahead and pour that on your plants.
How much compost would you put into the 5-gallon bucket?
5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, like
I would say take a burlap sack and you put some in there and tie it like that. So this is good, like a nice sack.
scoop?
Yeah, like a scoop, but don't put it directly in there. I would say put it in like a
Like
burlap
a
bag. Yeah. And that'll be a good way. And then after that, you can literally dip a little ladle in there, a little pot or something, and then just put them on your plants or your transplants or anything. It's just going to give them that extra boost that they need, and it really, really, really does work. Another thing that you can add to your compost tea is comfrey. You can take those leaves. Yes, you can take those leaves. You don't even have to break them up. You can just take them and rub them in your hands, just to struffle up the leaves a little bit, and then you add that to that little sack that you put the compost in for your compost tea, and then you just brew it in the 5-gallon bucket, and then you can dilute that and put it on your plants. You can put it directly on your plants. The only other thing that I would say, like you said at the beginning, these are working animals. That's what I call them. These are a part of your farm. These are like your cows. These are like your chickens. So they need to be treated as such and treated as the same respect as you would treat those livestock, because they're doing the exact same thing in their own way. And by them just living their life in a dark corner of your house, the trade-off is so. You're benefiting more from it than they are, honestly. They could be out in the wild, living their life, living nature, but instead they're keeping you company. They're breaking down your food scraps, and in return you getting compost. You getting other worms and eggs from them to start the whole cycle all over again. So that's why I feel like I love them so much, because they're like the building blocks. They're like one of the building blocks of all things nature. Like, these are the people that in the beginning, this is what helps sustain life. And if we can tend to respect them, gain a respect for them and other insects and things that we look at as illy and nasty, then the bigger stuff like humans and other animals would be easily, because we already have a connection with those. But stuff like this and bees and things like that, just trying to build those relationships to show people that they can look a little slimy, but they play such an important role in our lives that it's okay to be scared, but come and try it. Something's gonna be good. I'm terrified of bees. Like, I hate bees and ants, but I understand what they do. I understand how they're vital for life. So I show them their respect by staying out their way. That's about this thing. But you always can look at the worms, want to grab at them a little bit if you want to, Like I said, the worms, after a while, you don't have to touch them. I put the cap on, they already then retreated down into